The race to be US president in 2020 is underway. Bernie Sanders is running again, looking to replace the man he describes as the most dangerous president in modern American history. But is Sanders or any of the other Democratic candidates the right alternative to Donald Trump? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Hashim Ahalbarra. 3 years ago, Bernie Sanders started what he called a revolution. He ran for US president on a platform of progressive ideas such as free healthcare for all. The independent senator eventually lost the Democratic nomination to Hillary Clinton. But at 77 years old, Sanders believes he still has what it takes to win the White House. He's launched his campaign to be the Democratic candidate in 2020, saying he's the right man to face Donald Trump.
I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm running for president. And I'm asking you today to be part of an unprecedented grassroots campaign of 1 million active volunteers in every state in our country. Our campaign is not only about defeating Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in modern American history. It is not only about winning the Democratic nomination and the general election. Our campaign is about transforming our country and creating a government based on the principles of economic, social, racial, and environmental justice.
The 2020 Democratic primary looks to be crowded. At least 12 candidates have confirmed their run. Dozens more have still to decide. The list could be one of the most diverse in modern history. There are already a record number of women, vast age differences between candidates, and ethnic minorities. Most of those confirmed so far are positioned to the left of the political spectrum, campaigning on issues like universal health care, free college education, and higher taxes for the wealthy. They include Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, and Cory Booker. Former Vice President Joe Biden tops the list of potential candidates as a moderate. Let's introduce the panel. In Washington, D.C., Jeffrey Stacey, a former State Department official in the Obama administration. In Birmingham, UK, Adam Quinn, senior lecturer in American politics at the University of Birmingham. Also in Washington, Irina Shah, a Republican strategist and consultant. Welcome to you all. Mr. Stacey, Bernie Sanders is someone known for shaking the foundation of the Democratic Party in 2016. The question now, will he be able to replicate that which he achieved in 2016? Because ultimately he was the one to win 20 states.
He was indeed. He's a remarkable American, but unfortunately for Mr. Sanders, he's unlikely to meet his mark again this time around. He's facing a far different country, a far different field of Democratic candidates. He's not able to stand out as much as he did last time. Now, granted, he's raised an incredible amount of money right off the get-go. But unfortunately for him, there is a tendency in American politics to not give someone another shot at the top unless you become a vice president. But that wasn't the case with Bernie. He's got a really tough road to hoe.
Adam, this is someone who says that he will rely on a grassroots movement with 1 million volunteers in each state. Is this something easy to achieve?
Well, I think Bernie Sanders did something pretty remarkable back in 2016. He went from being a no-hoper, most people thought, to giving an extremely close run to what many people saw at the time in Hillary Clinton as not only the inevitable nominee, but the inevitable president. And he moved the agenda within the Democratic Party a long way towards the kind of policies that he supported on universal health care, on free college, on raising the minimum wage. The party has moved a long way towards him, and many of the people who were very excited to work for him last time to try and bring those visions about are still there ready to work with him. But he's dealing with a much, much more competitive field this time round. Many of the candidates who've entered newly to this contest are stealing his lunch in some ways by pursuing the same progressive policies, and he's going to have to fight a lot harder to keep the same turf he had last time.
Rina, what was the reaction of the Republican Party establishment following the announcement by Bernie Sanders to step in?
Well, the Republicans who support President Trump are grinning from ear to ear. They are delighted by the news of Bernie Sanders' candidacy, again, because it essentially means Democrats will have more infighting, as they did just a few years back. It's no surprise that Bernie is anti-establishment on the left. However, in a way, like your other guest said, he has moved the party further to the left. And that makes Republicans who support the president even more sure that President Trump can handily win re-election. For those of us who have been anti-Trump from the beginning of his candidacy, the beginning of the president's candidacy, rather, this is really actually bad news because of the same thing. We are hoping that the Democrats can put up a candidate that is able to take on Trump, to give him a good fight, because the power of the incumbency is so great. Somebody from the left, the challenge from the left is going to have to be very strong. And frankly, Sanders no longer presents that.
Jeff, I mean, you've said that this is a crowded field compared to 2016, but don't you think that at the same time people will still say this is the man who championed the principles of universal healthcare, free education, and taxing the wealthy? I mean, despite the fact that Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker are saying the same thing, but people would at least give him some credit for this.
Absolutely. I mean, he is a living legend. He is somebody who stands out there on the progressive wing of the party and is really beloved in a way, but not really for this race. They're wondering, is he the right man for this time? Does he have a plan this time around? I mean, he was the first person to go for universal health care, the first person to say American students should get free college. But now everyone says those things. They're younger. They're not old, they're not white, they're not male, and activists in this party actually are more excited about fresher blood. You already see this. A number of key activists, fundraisers, pollsters, consultants have left Sanders, surrogates. So he really does not have the team that he had last time. He doesn't have as much enthusiasm going as he did last time because there are new kids on the block, and there's more excitement surrounding them compared to this old warhorse, even if he is highly respected and highly regarded.
Adam, the political landscape, particularly when it comes to the... Rena, do you want to say anything there? Go ahead, please.
If I may, you can be a movement person, but does that mean you're going to be a great elected official? And I really think that's what Democrats understand now, that we've had a few years of Trump. We've seen what this is like. We see that there is a mess on our hands. For me, as a lifelong Republican, I'm seeing the trust in our public institutions eroding by the day because of this administration's actions. And that's extremely concerning to me. Policy-wise, there's very little I agree with people like Bernie Sanders. Is he a movement person? Yes. Should he deserve a lot of credit for enacting certain measures, I think, within the having that conversation within the Democratic Party, bringing these conversations to light. However, does it mean that he can do what is needed to appeal to the vast majority of Americans who are frustrated with how our government is working? Donald Trump was elected because Americans were frustrated with the status quo. Bernie Sanders, regardless of his age, he doesn't represent fresh new ideas that invigorate the public minds, rather, American minds, really.
Adam, the political landscape as far as the Democratic Party is concerned will definitely have to take some time before taking full shape. We don't know whether Biden is going to go ahead and run for the nomination. But don't you think that at least as many people are concerned, Bernie Sanders is someone who has been unfairly treated by the superdelegates of the Democratic Party? Clinton won, and the rest was a blunder for the Democratic Party, and that he could potentially be the only person to defeat Trump among the 12 candidates so far.
Well, I think there are a lot of people who think that Bernie was hard done by last time. There are a lot of people who think he would have had a better chance of beating Donald Trump if he had been able to get the Democratic nomination last time. And given that Hillary Clinton lost and lost narrowly, most people would probably be prepared to run that experiment again. But, you know, the world is different in 2020 than it was in 2016. You know, Bernie Sanders has made an excellent political career by banging the drum of a very particular issue, which is wealth inequality, wealth redistribution. But one of the things that Donald Trump being in the White House has really, really brought to the foreground is other kinds of discrimination in American society. Issues around race, issues around gender, that Bernie Sanders cares about, for sure, but has always made secondary. And there are a lot of candidates going for the Democratic nomination this time who, by virtue of being women, by virtue of being from ethnic minorities, don't just believe in progressive policies, but their election would represent a blow in favor of those parts of society that many people see President Trump as attacking, and many people see the fact that President Trump was elected as having insulted in a pretty grievous way. People who President Trump makes feel like they are not real Americans want someone who represents them in a broader way than Bernie Sanders can, through no fault of his own, can by winning this nomination.
Jeff, is Sanders' struggle with the African-American voters an issue that he has to look into carefully in the coming weeks and months?
That's one of them. There is also the youth. Last time around, one of the most incredible things, I mean, I worked for the other side. I advised the other candidate last time. And I remember getting into trouble at a Hillary event when I said in a microphone that I felt the burn at the time. And that was not a very popular thing. He's resented still today in the party for staying in the race too long. But more to your point, he's got not just a challenge with African Americans, he's got a challenge with young people today. As one of your other speakers just pointed out, young people today in the U.S. are more excited about people that look like them, sound like them, are closer to age than them. That wasn't around last time. Bernie was this exotic candidate. He was pure. He was fresh. None of those things are the case anymore. So he's got not only ideas that are, well, because of him, he gets the credit. They're more common now. But he doesn't look like people that want him to look. He doesn't sound like people want him to sound. He sounds a little tired. He's sort of been the guy that, well, he had a shot. He didn't make it. He gets the credit. And people really now in the party are sort of saying, thank you, Bernie, but hey, we're moving forward in a different way this time.
Rina, would he be an easy target if he were to win the nomination, given the fact that most of his ideals are seen as an attempt to push for a socialist system in the U.S.?
Oh, there's no doubt. President Trump already mentioned that yesterday in discussing his candidacy and discussing Sanders' candidacy. This is going to be an open and shut case if Bernie Sanders somehow makes it to the general election against Trump. There's going to be so much ammo from the right. And to the point that one of your other guests was making, my identity is as a daughter of immigrants, a woman of color, a young woman here in America. And I reject a lot of the xenophobia and the hate that I think has come to the surface in the era of Trump. However, a lot of it has been there, and that's a deeper discussion, of course. But another thing is this identity politics is what we're discussing, and I want to reject that because, frankly, you know, Bernie Sanders' campaign had sexual harassment issues within it as well, and those are going to be easy to peel out. Let's not forget the occupant of the Oval Office has massive issues with women, is a proven misogynist, has issues again with women. But these other campaigns, as most political campaigns in modern U.S. history, have been rife with scandal within the closed doors. As a longtime operative, I can tell you, I've witnessed some horrid things. And they've been on the campaigns of women and men. And so I want to reject the identity politics. And I think most Americans actually are willing to reject that. It is exciting to see somebody who is different, who looks different and sounds different. But let's not forget that that's also why Trump was elected. The people who gave him their vote believed that he would be different. And so it's not going to be enough for Kamala Harris to step up as a woman of color. It's not going to be enough for Cory Booker to step up as a male with brown skin. So these things are just very, very, I think, going to be diced out, and they're going to get ugly on the trail. They're going to get very ugly.
Jeff, I feel like here that we're a little bit underestimating Bernie Sanders, because if you go back to his track record, 2016, he won 13 million votes. He was able to raise 230 million. Yesterday, he rose something like $4 million. It's an impeccable record.
It is. I mean, he really is a grand individual in the party, in U.S. politics. He is, there's no argument. He's a living legend. He is somebody who has credibility right down the line. He has basically made original ideas. They're not original anymore, but he gets the credit for that. And he's very articulate on these issues, even verging on eloquent. Does he have the kind of magic this time around? He might. Well, I don't know. That's really tough, because one of the tests that we watch early when people announce is how they're treated on late-night comedy television here. And compared to the other candidates, Bernie got killed last night. I'm on every network, every host went not just a few lines on him, they went on, and the crowds ate it up. This, to me, was one of the early signs that the magic for Bernie, despite all the respect that he deserves, despite the fact that he will be there the whole way because he's a prolific money raiser, and some of the activists will never leave him. But this time around, I'm afraid the larger number of people in the party, and certainly the U.S. electorate, probably are not going to be there for Bernie in the end, despite how much credit he deserves because of what he's done up to this point.
Adam, Bernie Sanders will be 79 if inaugurated in 2020. Do you see it as a disadvantage here?
Yeah, well, it's an irony of Bernie Sanders that, of course, he's actually very popular with younger voters. That was the source of his strength in 2016. Many of those, especially young men who are supportive of him now, are on the youth side of the party. But at the same time, he, of course, was old then, is even older this time, would be the oldest president ever elected by a comfortable margin if he got into office. Now, I don't think there's any intrinsic reason why somebody who's old shouldn't be the president. Although, of course, it raises all the concerns about someone's health and fitness that you might imagine, but he seems like he's entirely alert and lively. Nevertheless, this is a moment in which there's a big generational gulf in American society. You know, many young people are looking at who's in the White House and feeling like this does not represent even the present, let alone the future, as they would like to see it. So the symbolism of putting somebody who's from a new generation into power would be enormously important at this particular moment. For that reason, I think, you know, again, it's not Bernie Sanders' fault that he's old, but I think it may be an unfortunateness of timing this time round, that it just isn't it isn't what fits the bill, because we're trying to get rid, the Democratic voters may think, of the oldest president ever in the White House. Trying to replace him with someone older doesn't have the same kind of generational shift feel that they would like to have.
Rina, let me say what some of Bernie Sanders' supporters advanced over the last few hours, basically to the Republicans, that you should not basically cherish in the fact that this man could end up being a punch bag for Trump if he were to be, if he won the nomination, because if he manages to unleash a second wave of revolution, he could make history again.
Well, in terms of a revolution, I just don't see it. Let's just put it that way. This is again going back to an original point about us in the American electorate not willing to give a chance to somebody who's stepped up to the stage before and hasn't been able to secure the
Rina, by the way,
sure.
If I may just, he's very solid when it comes to substance, very articulate. I mean, you can't compare him with Trump. His command of the issues that he talks about, the fibers that touches the very inner of every single underdog in the United States of America, they really identify with the man.
Indeed, indeed. He has appealed to a lot of working class individuals, and I certainly don't intend to compare him on an intellectual level. What we see from President Trump is almost unheard of. We've never seen this kind of thing. Somebody who has such a deep disregard for anything substantive and no desire to govern either. Obviously, Senator Sanders cares about governing. He does care about articulating the issues and at least finding policy solutions that he feels will help a certain set of Americans, right? So there's that much. But the style rather, it is disruptor style, I call it. And that means something because Americans, we have a very short attention span when it comes to our elections. So we tend to really go with what we've seen in the weeks just prior to an election. And it does come down to style rather than substance often. And I think that unfortunately leaves us at a disadvantage, we the American people, because we don't really get the policy solutions we want achieved. Mm-hmm. But here's one major point is that we know a lot more about Bernie Sanders today than we knew 2 to 3 years ago, obviously, right? And one thing is that Democrats are now saying you're a hypocrite. You advocate for working class solutions. However, you own 3 homes. Your wife was embroiled with a financial scandal at a university. Mm-hmm. These are not people that really reflect working class values in their daily life.
Jeff, but couldn't he end up being the man with some qualities that no one else has among the candidates within the Democratic Party? The fact that he is an outsider, an independent, and the only one who could build bridges with the grassroots and with those who have always considered themselves to be sidelined by the Democratic establishment. You look at the map, and he could be the right address, right man to build all those bridges.
He could be. He's the one candidate on the progressive left for the Democrats that is a known entity, that is already trusted, that has a brand that appeals. He has a program that appeals, policy ideas that were originally his before anybody else from the party. And this man does poll well against Trump. He's going to be able to raise the money. So even if he's got a new field and basically a tougher row to hoe this time around, he's going to be there in the race, doing well enough to stay in the race for a very long time. He'll be one of the kingmakers at the convention still, and that influence will be something that he holds on to. It's going to be a long shot, though. He is somebody who has a whole slew of snares this time around that he didn't face last time. And probably the biggest one of all is that once you take a shot at the top, the very top, you run for the presidency in the U.S., if you don't latch on to the vice presidency, you rarely get serious shot again. It's just something funny, and it's ironic because in this country of all countries, you're supposed to be able to begin again. Bernie is probably not going to be able to do it this time as much as
I see your point, Adam. So whoever wins, so we have a list of many dozens of people here, and the target is to defeat Donald Trump. Of all these candidates, although they are to the left of the spectrum of the Democratic Party, who do you think has more appeal to the millions of Americans determined to take to the polls this time and defeat Trump, of all the candidates that we know of so far?
Well, you put your finger on a very important question, which is electability, because I think a lot of Democrats in this contest, in addition to thinking about what policies they personally favor, are going to have an eye on who's most likely to accomplish what they tell pollsters is objective number 1, which is defeating the president. And there's going to be a lot of different theories of who's the best equipped to do that. Former Vice President Joe Biden at the moment apparently tops the polls, because I think that's mainly because of his name recognition being quite high. Senator Sanders comes second, but maybe that's because his name recognition is quite high too. And then behind that you have a very big field of Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand, Beto O'Rourke, lots and lots of people. But the main thing that they're going to be trying to convince the voters of is that whether they're progressive or whether they're to the center, whether they're a white man or whether they're a representative of a minority or whether they're a woman, the message they're going to want to sell everybody voting in these primaries is, you can trust me to win this election for you. And if they can convey that kind of competence, and if they can get the kind of polling results with the general public, that suggest to Democratic primary voters this is a strong candidate, then I think that's going to go a long way, because these things are about policy, but they're also inevitably about electability.
Adam Quinn, Jeff Stacey, Rina Shah, thank you very much indeed for your contribution to the program today. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website aljazeera.com for further discussion. Go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Hashim Ahlwar, and the whole team here in Doha. Bye for now.